Almost 2 years ago, Every Frame a Painting, one of the best media analysts in YouTube's history, and probably the best editor ever on the site, released what would be his final video, wherein he discussed the lack of interesting, unique, and emotionally connected music in the Marvel Cinematic Universe films, and the larger, more systemic version of that problem in Hollywood, which he then highlighted even more with a subsequent video that was 10 minutes of him comparing tracks from scores largely unrelated to the movie he was showing with the actual final tracks used in the film. Since then, those two videos have stuck around in my mind a lot, not only as great critiques of modern directors and editors in the Western film industry, but as an interesting mirror to similar problems that crop up in the medium of tokusatsu. Toku is a medium often driven by the writing and visuals werein, and while I do think those are very important parts of it, I also think music is something that is sometimes overlooked by people, and it can make shows suffer when that happens. Back in one of my earliest videos, I praised Kamen Rider for having some of the best intros in modern TV, with the perfect marriage of music and visuals. What I didn't mention, however, is the overuse of background music in modern Rider. What am I getting at here? Well, all you have to do is look at one of the most recent series, Ex-Aid, to see this problem in action. That song probably sounded awfully familiar to those of you who have seen Ex-Aid, and that's because it is used relentlessly throughout the show, in any scene that is supposed to convey some sort of strong emotion like this one. And that is often to the show's detriment, with this scene serving as a great example. Poppy's sacrifice is a great final moment for her character that serves to inspire the other writers in what is left of the show. But instead of the show letting me feel that here through a scene with no music that relies heavily on Matsuda Ruka's performance and those of the rest of the cast, it instead does the musical equivalent of holding up an audience cue card that reads, "Be sad," and thusly I feel nothing. Now, I'm not saying that this song is bad, it's just overused throughout the show and therefore loses any potency it could have had in a moment this late in the game. And the problem isn't just with this song or even with Ex-Aid. You can find tracks like this being used as a crutch all over Rider and Sentai shows from the last few years. Directors and editors in most Eastern tokusatsu seem unwilling to let their scene breathe or even to use their tracks more creatively. Which is irritating because when you see a series that doesn't do this, like the original Garo and 2017's Kaiju Club, which both have great soundtracks but only use them when they need to, it creates this dissonance of quality that doesn't need to be there when you go back to a Toei series. When there's a tense dialogue-driven scene, you get the quiet intrigue track. When there's an emotional scene, you get the in-your-face feel sad track. And when there's a big action moment, you get one of the more bombastic tracks, etc., etc. But this isn't a problem with every Toei show. In the last few years, we've seen a few series use their BGMs really well, such as Gokaiger, Kyuranger, and Drive. Though it is still there, and becoming more of an issue each year, and the only explanation I can come up with for why this is happening is the speed at which these shows are produced. Unlike Western children's shows, Rider and Sentai air new episodes year-round with almost no breaks in the production schedule in order to facilitate that. And that's not even mentioning the fact that the two franchises normally have 3 movies and multiple Blu-ray exclusive bonus episodes starring the current cast per year. So I have no doubt that things may blur together for people working on them from time to time, causing them to forget the simple fact that they've already used that track in this episode once, and maybe this scene doesn't need as much BGM as they think it does. But that's all conjecture on my part, which just highlights the fact that we need more interviews with people working behind the camera in Toku so we can find out more about these things. But before I can get all the way onto my soapbox, let's switch gears to something I do think is still being done well musically in Toku. Insert songs, which have been a part of Toku since almost the beginning, and are still going strong in the current era thanks to groups like Kamen Rider Girls, Rider Ships, and Project R, to name just a few. Whenever one is actually used in the show, I almost always find it a welcome change from the normal fare of the soundtrack. There's something about the energy of an insert that just gives a scene more punch than it normally would have, especially when a show goes the extra mile and gives us something like this. Having the actors actually be the ones singing one of the most thematically important inserts in the series like this makes it the most impactful it can possibly be, and makes me that much more invested in the series when used. Especially because Toei seems to only do it sparingly these days, so when it does happen, it almost feels like a miniature event within the franchise. However, those are all shows with small problems that can easily be fixed. There's one other show I've been tiptoeing around that could really use a complete overhaul. Power Rangers is a franchise I love, but like a lot of it in recent years, the music has really been lacking. Of course, there's the main issue of them reusing Go-Go Power Rangers for 4 years straight, but the main thing that really bothers me is Noam Kanyil's scores. Ever since he took over the music at the start of Power Rangers Samurai, Kanyil has been putting out some of the most uninteresting, emotionless scores I have ever heard for a toku. And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's bad music, I just think it does little to enhance the show other than add some sort of music to the scenes. With the obvious handful of exceptions. I didn't always feel this way either. I used to defend Kanyil's scores all the time, saying they were the best stuff we've gotten since Ron Wasserman and Jeremy Sweet. And while I do still think that, I now realize it isn't saying much when everything in between is either really out of place feeling synth tracks or public domain music and stings that just made the show feel more obviously cheap than usual. Power Rangers is a show that traditionally has a lot of its personality in its music. The original 6 seasons not only had really great scores for a children's show of their time, but were also chock full of great inserts that I still listen to all the time. Which makes it feel really bizarre now that we have the same musician who created the Code Lyoko theme, one of my favorite cartoon themes of all time, working on the show. He's just producing a lot of really bland tracks with the occasional gem in the mix. I don't mean to beat up on the guy, it's just I know he can do better, and when even Sentai's as bad as Shuriken Sentai Ninninger still have way better soundtracks than their PR counterparts, it shows a clear problem. As stated in the last video, Tokusatsu is currently my favorite medium, but it's one I feel could really stand to musically step up its game for all the reasons I've outlined in this video. And don't think this problem is exclusive to the Big Four. There are plenty of other lesser known toku I could harp on all day for the same issues, but have chosen not to for the sake of remaining relevant. and not going insane while editing this video, which is work I could be handing off to someone else so I have more time to make videos if enough of you were to go and become a patron. So if you're interested in that happening, as well as getting access to my patrons only Discord server, behind the scenes content and other cool stuff, why don't you go ahead and click the link at the top right of the video and pledge a few bucks.